Hello and welcome to Pictures of Pilgrimage. This is my attempt to have sabbatical notes this week while I'm horribly jet lagged. Got home a couple of days ago and I can't seem to shake the 7 hour time difference from Jerusalem. Anyway, I'm just going to run through some of my pictures from the trip today, just a high level look at the trip in general. It's a wonderful trip. We started on the top of Mount Scopus, overlooking the old city of Jerusalem on Tuesday, June 11th. And then we went to Herodium, which was the place where Herod the Great lived. Herod was not called Great because people liked him. He was called Great because he did a lot of building projects. It was about 7 miles from Jerusalem. The next day, on June 12th, we went into the Old City. The highlight that day was the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, also known as the Church of the Resurrection. This is the place where the church remembers Golgotha being Calvary. It's in the city now, but in the days of Jesus it was outside the city. We stopped there again later on. After the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, we went to one of the places that might be the upper room where Jesus had the Last Supper with his disciples. That was a really beautiful spot, very, very peaceful and calm. Let's see, the next day on June 13th, we got up really early and we went to the Western Wall, which is the place where the Jewish population of Jerusalem comes to pray. It's the closest they can get to where the temple used to be. After the Western Wall, which was very moving and wonderful, we went up onto where the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque are. Very peaceful spot without a lot of people at that time of day. It was during the couple of hours where tourists can go see it. The Dome of the Rock is absolutely stunningly gorgeous. And from there we could see a lot of different spots. One of my favorite things to look at was the Mount of Olives. I just loved looking at the top where the Church of the Ascension is, and it's just a beautiful spot. After the Dome of the Rock and the Western Wall, we got on the bus and we went to Bethlehem, and we went to the Shepherd's Field, and we went to the Church of the Nativity, as well as the church next door to it, which I can't remember the name of. The thing about Bethlehem is that it is surrounded by a separation wall right now. It is in the West Bank, and it's basically impossible for citizens of the West Bank, of the town of Bethlehem, to get to Jerusalem, even though it's only a couple miles away because of the wall. And in Bethlehem, one of the things that I really noticed about this pilgrimage crystallized for me, which is when we went to the holy sites of the church, that were really built up and had a lot of adornment and ornamentation and lots of tourists around them. It was really hard to be present in those times, especially at the Church in the Nativity, where the church remembers Jesus being born in that space. We went to a cave nearby there, which would have been very similar to the one that Jesus was born in, and that place was much holier. I think I speak for a lot of our group when I say that we had a similar experience when we were in places of sort of serenity that were adjacent to, but not the actual holy site. They felt so much holier. The next day we got up even earlier and we drove out into the desert, and we spent an hour or so in the desert with the sunrise. We had Holy Communion, and that was incredibly beautiful, and a wonderful reminder that God is in the wilderness too. After that, we drove to Jericho, also in the West Bank, and we went up the Mountain of Temptation, where the church remembers Jesus being tempted after his baptism. There's a monastery up there. After that, we continued north out of the West Bank into Israel proper, and went to Nazareth. And in one of the churches of the Annunciation, the beautiful image that really touched me was of Jesus as a small child riding on Joseph's shoulders. I've never seen an image like that before, and it was just so wonderful to see. And the next day, on Saturday, we spent the whole day around the Sea of Galilee. We stopped at the Jordan River and renewed our baptismal vows. Then we went to Capernaum. We went to the Mount of the Beatitudes. We went to the spot of the feeding of the 5,000 and the place where the risen Christ called the disciples in the fishing boat. What a wonderful day. We actually went out on the water of the Sea of Galilee as well in a boat, which was just great. That day was just lovely. I also was blessed to celebrate Holy Communion near the site of the feeding of the 5,000. On Sunday, we went to church at Christ Church in Nazareth, and then we went to Sepphoris, which is an ancient city which is being excavated nearby, probably the place where Jesus would have plied his trade. The next day, we made our way back to Jerusalem, stopping in a few places along the way. I don't have any pictures of them, so I'm not going to talk about them today. And then on Tuesday, we in Jerusalem went to the Garden of Gethsemane, which was my favorite part of the entire trip. The olive trees are hundreds and hundreds of years old, and they're just absolutely gorgeous. We went up onto the Mount of Olives and overlooked the city and saw all of the places that Jesus went during his passion. And we also visited a wonderful place that cares for children with all kinds of physical and mental challenges. That's sponsored by the Episcopal Church in Jerusalem. Tuesday afternoon, we went to the Dead Sea, and several of our group floated in it. This was like spring break in Florida. This was the most touristy part of the trip, and it was no fun. So moving on, Wednesday we got up really early and we walked the Stations of the Cross, the Via Dolorosa, in the old city of Jerusalem, ending up at once again the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and a very moving experience again. We also got to touch the rock of Golgotha. That was on our last day. It was nearly the last thing we did. We drove out to Emmaus and had our final Holy Communion service there. And then we had the afternoon free, and then we went to the airport and flew home. So there's some pictures of my trip. Hopefully this video is coherent. It's hard for me to tell since I'm very tired and still jet-lagged. More to come in the future, and praise God for a wonderful experience.